crazy to think that we only have 2 weeks left of fantasy football. This season has flew by, but it's still the most important time of the year. Fantasy playoffs, we need to make the championship game. So if you have any questions or just want a second opinion, drop them in the comments below. I'll answer you as quickly as I possibly can. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start with Gardner Minshew. And over the last 3 weeks, three of the top 10 quarterbacks in that span of time have been on your waiver wire. Jake Browning, Joe Flacco, and Gardner Minshew. To me, Gardner Minshew has been great for Indy as of late. But now more than ever, these games coming up for them are going to be must-win situations. He plays Atlanta this week, who are basically a top 10 matchup for the quarterback position. And not to mention, Atlanta's a mess right now. They're going to be starting Taylor Heineke this weekend. If you don't have an elite option at quarterback, and again, if you had a Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, Gardner Minshew is going to be your starter this weekend. I promise you, he should have a pretty good day against a pretty bad defense. Tua Tagovailoa, some would say that Tua and this offense shocked the world last week because they dominated a tough New York Jets defense without Tyreek Hill. And, well, even if I were to agree with that, Tua only had a 9-point fantasy football day. This week, he looks to do the same against a hungry and a defense ready to bounce back, a Dallas Cowboy defense. And again, they're looking to get back on track after that embarrassing loss to Miami's division foe. Some people are quick to say bench Tua this week just because of the fact that of this tough matchup against the Dallas defense. But with Tyreek back, I can see a solid day from Tua this week, and I can see maybe a 10 to 15 point fantasy day. And I just know that his floor is extremely low this weekend. 10 to 15 points is okay, but it's not going to win you your week. And that is what we're kind of shooting for in these fantasy playoffs. So if you have another option, like a Gardner Minshew or another guy like that, I would start them over Tua this weekend. For example, I have a choice between Tua or Kyler this weekend. I think I'm going to lean towards Kyler over a guy like Tua. But again, Tua could be a solid start. I just know his floor is extremely, extremely low. But moving over to the running back position, let's talk about Tua's teammate in De'Von Achane, as he's been frustratingly inconsistent since returning from his injury at the midseason mark. And it's just really tough to know when to trust him. Can he stay healthy? And when he's healthy, is he going to get enough volume? And sure, he's such a dynamic playmaker that he only needs 3 to 4 touches to really, change the outcome of your fantasy matchup on a weekly basis because he's that good. But Raheem Mostert is guaranteed at least half the carries in this offense. And we know that, in every game. And again, it's become extremely obvious that when it comes to the red zone, Raheem Mostert has 20 touchdowns this year. He's going to get the work over De'Von Achane when it comes to the goal line. So given the inconsistencies in De'Von Achane's game, given the tough matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, I'd play it safe and sit De'Von Achane this weekend. Again, if you have another option, but there might not be many players that have a ceiling higher than De'Von Achane. For Ezekiel Elliott, let's talk about a division foe for the Miami Dolphins. And the question is really, what version of Ezekiel Elliott are we going to get? That is the $1 million question. As 2 weeks ago and the week before that, Zeke was around the running back one on the week, and he was on top of the world, and us fantasy players, we loved him. But then this past week, he had only 9 fantasy points, and he gets the Kansas City Chiefs defense, and he was the running back 27, which is still solid. However, it could have knocked you out of your fantasy playoffs. This week, he plays a Denver defense, which is the worst defense at stopping the running back position. So given the favorable matchup and the fact that this offense is desperate for answers, they might rely on this veteran going forward in Ezekiel Elliott. I'm going to be rolling with Zeke this weekend to bounce back in a big way. Even if Ramondre returns, I think that helps Zeke even more, keeps him a little bit more fresh throughout the game. But I think 80% of the work this weekend is guaranteed to be on 20 or 15 shoulders, is a good way to put it. But how about Aaron Jones? Again, we're going to talk about a lot of these running backs that are on the brink of starting or sitting this weekend. For Aaron Jones, I think he finally escaped a game without being injured last week. And, I'm happy that he was able to do that. But, if that can continue, I do like to start this weekend if he can stay healthy. And if you're wondering, it wasn't really just a small workload. It wasn't just, okay, you got 5 touches and then he went to the bench and he remained healthy. He got a decent workload. He had 13 carries, 53 yards, and he also had 4 receptions on top of that, resulting, of course, in only about 11 to 12 fantasy points. But he still was a top 20 running back with this not full of a workload for an Aaron Jones style of player. So to me, you can only imagine that if he's fully healthy, and it's his second week back, and AJ Dillon's still nagging injuries, I think he will be an X factor for this Packers offense going forward because Jordan Love, he's going to have that security blanket down the stretch, and these games are must wins for the Packers and for our fantasy teams down the stretch of the season. So to me, start Aaron Jones at a must win this weekend for everybody involved. For Jerick McKinnon, again, he's our last running back. We're going to start this week as he's doing it yet again during the playoffs last year, the fantasy playoffs, of course. He was the running back 2 overall. This year, he's off to a great start. 1 week in, and he's the running back 10 overall, and that was splitting the work with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The best thing about McKinnon to me and having him on your roster and maybe even starting him this weekend is for the fact that even when Pacheco returns, I think McKinnon's work will still be there, especially when Pacheco tries to work his way back up from injury, because only Clyde Edwards-Helaire work should go down. McKinnon brings that much-needed pass blocking and, of course, the receiving ability. So to me, go get him. And if you're in a desperate, situation, if you're in a bind, I would actually contemplate starting Jerick McKinnon this weekend because, again, his workload should be there even if Pacheco returns to the field. So start him this weekend as, again, the Chiefs are trying to close out the year strong, and so is your fantasy team. For Gus Edwards and Isaiah Likely, again, we have to dive into this Monday night matchup between Baltimore and San Fran. A lot is riding on this Monday night game. But even with that said, I think you should start pretty much all of your 49ers. Your Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, all of those guys you want to start for the 49ers because that offense and that team is just too dominant at the moment to do anything else, right? But for Baltimore, and we'll start with Gus Edwards, I'm going to sit him this weekend despite the Keaton Mitchell injury because I just don't want to rely on a touchdown-dependent back when my playoff lives are on the line in fantasy football. It's different in the regular season when you're shooting for the most points in the league and you're shooting just for, a win because you have a guy on a bye week. To me, it's different when it comes to the playoffs where every single point, every single touch matters. I would sit Gus Edwards this weekend and go with another option that might bring you a little bit more, a bit of a safer floor is a good way to put it. For Isaiah Likely, and this one might be a little bit more interesting, a bit of a hot take, I would dare to say, but I don't hate the play this weekend. To me, though, you're playing San Fran, a team that is on top of the world right now, and they're really good against the tight end position. And this game, it might have the potential to be just ugly from start to finish with how great these defenses are. So to me, I would sit him as well if you have other options. But again, I guess it just depends. How likely do you think that Baltimore can win this game against the 49ers? I don't think they have much of a chance. How about another tight end? A tight end that has been on top of the world in David Njoku, the Chief, as us Browns fans call him. But his numbers speak for themselves on the top left of your screen. But if the numbers aren't dominant enough for you to look past his next couple of matchups and say, I'm starting him no matter what, well, I'll give you the layout for the rest of the year. He plays Houston this weekend. They're bottom 5 against the tight end position. And simply put, Joe Flacco trusts him. And even if he doesn't have that one big play or two like he's had the last 2 weeks, you can still count on him to catch 5 or so screen passes a game. That is just the Kevin Stefanski offense, is the dink and dunk style of offense. Get your guys, get your playmakers the ball in space. And Joe Flacco, of course, gets the ball to David Njoku on these little dump offs at least 5 times a game. So to me, you can at least count for 8 to 10 fantasy points on a given week. And for the tight end position, that's pretty good unless you have Travis Kelce. So to me, David Njoku's floor is extremely safe. And his ceiling is what we've seen the last 2 weeks as he's been the number 1 tight end in back-to-back weeks. So to me, David Njoku is not only a start, but a must start this weekend. And again, I would even contemplate starting 2 tight ends if you have him and a Travis Kelce. At the wide receiver position, we'll finish up here with Stefan Diggs. And I'll keep this one simple. It's been a rough couple of weeks for Stefan Diggs, no doubt about it, as this new offensive coordinator seems to favor the run game and to favor saving Josh Allen's arms only for the time that they need it, as James Cook has been killing it, and this run game has been dominant since this new OC took over. And again, this Bills offense dominated in a big win last week, and Josh Allen only threw it 15 times. It's very unlike Josh Allen that he throws under 25 times in a game. But at the end of the day, you most likely don't have a better play, a guy with a safer floor and a bigger upside and a bigger ceiling than a guy like Stefan Diggs. So to me, stick with your studs. Don't overthink it. And what I like to say in these situations is really play and pray. So to me, play Stefan Diggs. He was a first or second round pick in your drafts, and you got to roll with your studs at this point in the season. And then finally is DeAndre Hopkins. The numbers on the top left of your screen are a result of when Ryan Tannehill was a starting quarterback and not Will Levis, as his numbers are night and day better when Will Levis took over in week 8 and on until this past week. But now Will Levis went down with an injury. He's questionable for this weekend and for the rest of the season with an ankle injury. To me, if Will Levis is not the quarterback, I do not want to trust any of these Titans players outside of maybe Derrick Henry, and maybe you can make an argument for a guy like Tajay Spears. So to me, if you have another option, please sit D-Hop this weekend. But again, I guess if he's helped you get there, you want to roll with the guys that's gotten you to this point. I understand the start. Or if you trust Ryan Tannehill, I understand the start. But to me, this offense looked night and day better when Will Levis was the guy and not Ryan Tannehill. So to me, I don't want to start Ryan Tannehill. I would rather roll with another guy on my bench if he has a better upside. But that's ultimately going to do it here for today's video. Again, if you enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. We only have one more video of these to do, as we're going to do one more start sit, and then we might do something fun to end the year where we recap the season. But until then, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll answer them as quickly as I possibly can. Until Tuesday, get out of here.